Hey everyone, and welcome back. Before we get into our episode today, I have a few big announcements that I can't wait to share with y'all. After months of getting everything together, I am excited to announce that Talks with Ray Every Day is now on 13 streaming platforms. You heard correctly, 13 different platforms. You all can now get your fill of Talks with Ray Every Day on Apple and Google Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and of course, Anchor and Spotify. And to make this announcement even bigger, Talks with Ray Every Day has its own social media accounts. That's right, you guys can now get behind the scene clips, coming soon announcements, and more when you guys follow and subscribe to at Ray Talks, that's RAETLKS on Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, or simply click on the links on the Anchor website. But that's not all. Talks with Ray Every Day has its own group chat on the app GroupMe, where you can meet other fans, leave your thoughts, comments, episode suggestions, and more. I couldn't have done this without you guys. Y'all are the best. Now that we're done with our announcements, let's get into today's episode. Disclaimer: the following episode is one of my own personal opinion and advice, so please enjoy the episode. Welcome back to another episode. Today's episode is about how to say no and stand your ground. So, grab your cup, take a seat, and get your fill of Talks with Ray every day. Today's episode is going to be broken down into two parts. Part one is going to be about how to say no, and part two is about how to stand your ground. So, sit back, relax, and let's start the show. For the first portion of this episode, it's going to be about how to say no. And after doing research and through my life experiences, I've come to learn a few techniques on how to say no when it comes to people or situations. And one of the first techniques I learned is be assertive and courteous. Now, what I mean by be assertive and courteous, I mean you have to be firm when you say no. You have to let this person know that when you say no, you mean no. And you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be like rude or make them feel a type of way or make them feel upset or anything like that. You just have to be firm when you sit there and say no. And you can say it nicely. You can say no, thank you, or no, thank you for thinking of me. No, I just really don't like doing that. Basically, be nice but firm at the same time because you want people to understand that when you say no, you are not wanting them to pressure you into saying yes. You don't want them to guilt trip you or manipulate you or any of these other crazy ways of making you kind of waver off of that and say yes. You want to have them understand that when you sit there and say no, you mean it and you're not trying to be rude. You're not trying to be, you know, kind of a jerk about it. You're just saying no and the reason why you said no. This second technique that I learned is kind of a two-parter. Um, it's basically be selfish or you don't have to explain yourself. Because when you sit there and tell someone no, whether it's a topic that they want to talk about or a situation that you don't really want to be a part of, you can be selfish. You don't have to explain to them why you sit there and said no. You can just be like, no, I don't want to do it and leave it at that. Because at the end of the day, it's about you and what you feel comfortable doing. It's not about them and them trying to convince you to do something that you obviously don't want to do. Because in the end, that's just, it's wrong. And there's no other way around it. So point two in this portion of the episode of how to say no is just be selfish. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to explain why you said no because at the end of the day, it's about you and what you want to do. Technique number three is offer a alternative only if you want to do it. Now, if you don't exactly want to do what this person is asking you to do, or maybe you just feel a type of way about what this person is suggesting, you can offer an alternative, in the way of maybe saying, well, why not we go do this instead of that? Because I know we both enjoy doing this. So that, they maybe not feel a type of way about you saying no. It can accommodate both of you, just instead of just one of you. But at the end of the day, the only reason why you would offer an alternative to what they are suggesting is only if you want to do it. If you want to be a good person or a good friend or good coworker or whatever the situation is, and you still want to do what the person's asking, maybe finding an alternative that both fits both of your needs is something that achieves what they want to do, but something that you are maybe more comfortable doing is a better alternative than just saying no. Technique 4 that I've learned is just say no. Like, just say it. If you have a person who's just asking you to do something and you're not in the mood to do it, you don't feel good, you're just not in the mood, you're not mentally well enough to do it. Maybe you're sick and or maybe you're just, you're bored and you really don't want to do anything today. Just, just say it. Just say no and completely live it at that. Like, this goes in with being selfish and you don't have to explain yourself. Sometimes we just don't want to do stuff. Sometimes we just don't like the idea or don't like the project, don't like what this person is saying, or it could be anything. And sometimes it's just a simple no suffice. And you don't have to throw on all the extra stuff. Just a simple no and carry on your way. The last technique I learned on how to say no is set boundaries. And what I mean by set boundaries is you can say no because you don't feel comfortable doing this and explain that to this person or explain why you don't feel comfortable in that situation. For example, no, I don't like being in close spaces, and what you're asking me involves me being in close spaces, and I don't feel comfortable doing that. So no. It's that simple. Like, you're setting boundaries for yourself and you're telling this person your boundaries, and in turn they need to respect that. And when you say no, you're telling them, no, respect my boundary, respect my position on this, and take it at face value. Now, if this person feels upset or feels the type of way about it, that's on them, because at the end of the day, they need to respect you when you say no. That could be a another small technique is they gotta respect you when you say no. They have to respect your boundaries. They have to respect that you just maybe not want to do it, and they have to be okay with that and be okay with your boundaries. And that wraps up the first portion of our episode. After this short break, we will be back to discuss how to stand your ground. So go get your refill, come back and relax, and we will be back. And we're back. This portion is how to stand your ground. And very similar to the first portion, after, doing my research and from, life experience, I've come up with a few techniques on how I've learned to stand my ground. And hopefully these will help you. The first one being agree to disagree. This is a big one I've learned over the years, is sometimes when when you tell someone no, or if people keep pressuring you to do something or to talk about a subject or anything of any sorts, sometimes you gotta agree to disagree. I know this really applies to topics that maybe you don't want to talk about. For example, say for instance, this person doesn't like Harry Potter, but you love Harry Potter. Well, you're gonna have you can settle on agreeing to disagree. You respect their opinion and they respect your opinion. And it's very simple, based like that. It's just sometimes when it comes to standing your ground, it's just sometimes you gotta agree to disagree and respect each person's opinion and stance. Kind of tying into the first technique, this next technique is respect what the other person doesn't want to talk about or do. Um, this really applies to when people keep pressuring you to talk about a subject that maybe you're not comfortable talking about, or maybe trying to push an idea on you that maybe you don't agree with. You have to stand your ground when after you've said no, stand your ground and tell them that you don't want to do this, that even tell them, hey, respect my decision on this, respect my stance on this, respect the fact that maybe I don't want to talk about the subject, or maybe I don't want to do this idea because it makes me uncomfortable. That to me is very common sense and very a human thing, is respect. And I know a lot of times respect is earned, and a lot of times respect is given. If I giving you enough respect to maybe agree to disagree with what we were talking about, now maybe respect me and my decision of I don't want to talk about the subject or I don't want to do this idea. It's a very common sense ideology of respecting one another in the end. And this third technique really ties into the last one, which is be open only to what you want to talk about or what you want to do. Now, we can be nice people and do something for a person out of the goodness of our hearts, but only if we are open to do it. Now, if you're not open to do a idea that someone has suggested, or maybe you're not open to the topic that somebody's talking about, that's okay. You can what? Be selfish and not do it and set boundaries, and they have to respect that. See how all these are tying in together? So being open only to what you want to talk about or what you want to do is completely fine, because you're setting boundaries that they need to respect, and you're standing your ground when you tell someone, hey, I don't want to talk about that subject, let's talk about something else. And though you're open to discussing other topics, maybe not that specific one, you're still standing your ground and saying that you don't want to talk about that topic, you don't want to do that idea, but you're open to talk about other things and not completely shutting the person down. This technique is entitled Don't Be Afraid to Speak Your Mind. Sometimes people just don't get it. They don't understand. It's not clicking in their head. And you have to tell them what's on your mind. And you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be rude about it. You can just be simple, like, no, I don't want to do it. You're not going to change my mind. I don't like the idea. I don't like the message it's giving, so on and so forth. Because sometimes people, it takes you telling them multiple times and expressing how you feel and what's on your mind for them to finally understand when you say no, you mean no. And though you don't have to explain yourself, sometimes people need explaining. Sometimes you need to put your foot down and be like, I don't like this because for whatever reason you don't like it. And that's okay. Sometimes you but then too sometimes you might end up being a jerk. And that's okay. Sometimes you gotta be rude with people. Sometimes you gotta be like, look, I don't want to. You're not gonna change my mind. That's that's it. Point blank, period. And if they feel a type of way about it, they feel a type of way about it. They weren't getting the hint in the beginning, and sometimes, though, the saying is you attract flies with honey more than vinegar. So sometimes you gotta swat that fly for it to understand to leave you alone. And I know we're analogies, but that's the best way I can explain it. But it's okay. It's okay to speak your mind. Don't be afraid to. Don't be afraid to be rude sometimes. Don't be afraid that you might hurt somebody's feeling by saying no. Because if they don't understand it and you're being nice, sometimes you gotta be extra firm and assertive. Remember, part one, be assertive and just tell them how you feel and let them know you are not wavering from your decision. And this final technique that I learned, which is kind of full circle and goes back to part one, set boundaries for yourself. Now, we can set boundaries in general and say, I don't want to do this because it makes me feel uncomfortable. But sometimes you have to set boundaries with yourself, meaning when you sit there and say, you don't want to do this for this reason, don't crumble. Don't lose that ground that you stand on when they keep pressuring you to do it. Because in the end, if they keep pressuring and pressuring and you give after you set that boundary, they're never going to respect what you don't want to talk about or respect what you don't want to do. And they're going to keep crossing that boundary because you yourself have crossed your own boundary. And that's really important when you want to stand your ground and when you want to say no, because boundaries is the key in life when it comes to other people, when it comes to yourself. If you don't want to do something and they know that you don't want to do it, they need to respect that boundary. But if they keep pressuring you and you end up giving in because you just want them to be quiet, how can you expect them to respect your boundary when you yourself don't respect your boundary? So, in the end, boundary is the main key in both, especially when it comes to stating your ground. Because, in the end, if you don't respect your boundary, how do you expect them to respect the boundary that you set? And that's the end of this episode, folks. This was my first requested episode, and as you can tell, I enjoyed making it. If y'all have any episode suggestions, please leave them in the comments, and I'll try my best to get to them. Now, remember to stay safe and always stand your ground, no matter what. Also, happy Valentine's Day, you guys! Since you all are my Valentine this year, this is my gift to you all. See you next time on Talks with Ray every day. Love ya.